Hey there, this is Brett Monro. I am from BrettBeat, and I am super happy today to have with me Greg Chaisson. Now, Greg, we are here at Bizarre Guitar. It is an awesome-looking store. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for coming by. And yes, Bizarre Guitar and Drum, my home away from home.
Well, it's awesome to be here, and it's awesome to talk to you because, I mean, I got to be honest, I've been a fan of yours for many, many, many years now.
Okay.
And so it's cool. But the reason that we're here to talk primarily is Freak Show. So
Yep.
Ronnie Borchardt set this up, and so you played on the Freak Show album. Now, how did that come about?
Somehow, I think Ronnie and I were friends on Facebook, and I had never met him before, but I know Stat. I've known him for a while, and I've known Carlos for a long time as well. So I don't know how my name got involved in it. I think Ronnie was a big Badlands fan at one point, and I don't know if Stet got me involved or mentioned we should get Chaisson or whatever. So he just called me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And I was like, send me some tracks and let me hear what it is exactly that you do. And I also looked up the previous Freak Show with Jeff LeBar and Tony Franklin on it. And I thought, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. I can do this. And so I just agreed to do it. I did it for very limited amount of money, just because I kind of believed in the project, and Ronnie's turned out to be like a really good dude. My insight was right about, okay, yeah, these guys seem like they're straight shooters. I'll do it.
Now, when it comes down to laying bass tracks like that, because I know Ronnie had done like all the guide stuff. So then, like, what's it like for you to come in and go to work over top of that?
Well, it's always kind of weird. What he had guide rhythm guitar with no vocals, and then Stet's drumming. He had Stet's final drum tracks on there. So there may have been bass that he had recorded as guide bass, but I don't ever listen to that. So I had him send me something with just the guitars and the drums. And the weird part about it, or the part that you have to kind of navigate, is when there's no vocals on it, no guitar solos, you don't know which part is which. So is this the intro? Is this the verse? Is this the chorus? Is it just a rip? Is there a bridge? Is there a this? Is there a that? So, and because Stet had already laid his drum tracks down, I had to be a little bit more, my playing was less complicated than what I would normally do, because I didn't want to step on what would eventually be the vocals. I didn't want to step on whatever Carlos was going to be doing. And so I just kind of had to get a feel for what was going on. I mean, I recorded the whole record in 6 hours.
Wow.
So my buddy here, Ryan McKay, that works here in the store with me, has a studio at his house. I listened to the tracks. I didn't even listen all the way through them. I listened to them a little bit just to see what was going on. I showed up at his house. We got me set up. We got a bass sound I liked. I said, play me the first song. And he'd play it for me, and I'd go, okay, give me the chorus. What I deemed was the chorus. I didn't even record the songs in order. I recorded them part by part, on each song. So maybe I'll do the outro first to just kind of get me in the groove of what's going on in the rest of the song. So, and again, I kind of dumbed it down a little bit just because I didn't know what went where. And I remember thinking, God, I hope I'm not screwing this up. And I actually told Ronnie, I said, if we do another record at some point, I want to rehearse once. Yeah. And I want to hear where the vocals go, so I know where I can do whatever, because I approached it from a very much less is more perspective, which is not my normal way of doing it. That came out good, but it is always challenging to play bass on tracks that exist and with a pre-existing drum track, and you're not 100% sure what part you're playing to.
Yeah, because it's super interesting. I mean, finding out about kind of the iteration of this project. And then what did you think of it when you finally heard the whole thing?
Oh, I thought it was great. Once I heard the whole thing, I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. When you're doing it recording it the way I recorded it, and not hearing vocals or guitar solos or whatever, I was going, God, I hope this sounds actually good. And when he sent me a couple of tracks, I went, okay, yeah, this sounds good. My part fits in there, works good with Stat. The songs are good. He's a good singer. Carlos did a great job on it. So it was like kind of like a relief in a way, even though it's at that point, it was just a session for me. He wanted me to do it. I wasn't interested in being in the band. I had my own band at the time, which I've since quit, and I have the store here. So, he was saying, well, we're going to go on tour for 3 weeks with, I said, I can't go on tour for 3 weeks. I got to be here. And so he knew going in that I was doing it as a session, but I think he liked what I did well enough, and the way everything kind of gelled together, that he was kind of hoping that maybe I would be involved beyond that. And at some point, maybe I would. Who knows what the future holds. But what I did is I recommended my buddy Rick Fox, who was looking for a gig and has the time and the wherewithal to go on tour. And I said, try Rick out and see how that works. And apparently that's worked really good. So I'm glad the record came out good. And on one hand, I wish I was more involved in it. But on the other hand, it's the best I could do at the time. So.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. We talked to Rick Fox, and it's funny how like your paths have crossed like a couple of times where he'll follow you into a band, and that's happened a couple of times, right? So,
well, when I first got to LA, it was really funny because this is me. This is what if I went out to a bar, this is what I look like. And so I had just moved to LA, and I had a couple roommates there, and we went out to the Troubadour or the Rainbow or I don't remember where we went, but I saw Rick Fox, and I'm like, who's that? And they said, that's Rick Fox. I said, well, what does he do? Well, he's a bass player. I went, you can't compete with that look. How am I supposed to? I might as well go back home. I look like the guy that carries Rick Fox's equipment. And they were like, no, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. You have your own thing, just do your own thing. And then through the course of time, I followed Rick in Steeler, and him and I ended up becoming friends after that. Rick always had the perfect rock image, and I have no image. I do now. But at the time, I didn't really have one. I was just a guy that I looked like I should have been in Iron Maiden. I didn't really fit in what was going on in LA at the time with the big hair and the leather pants and the 50 bracelets and bandanas. I was just like, man, oh, is this going to work for me? And image has always kind of been an issue for me, but it worked out okay. So.
Well, yeah, and eventually you did wind up in Badlands.
I did.
Now I got to be honest, the first Badlands album is one of my favorite of all time.
Thank you.
Like, I think that work is spectacular overall. Like, what was it like then to kind of create those albums? Because between the first one and then even the second one, they're very different sounding albums.
Well, from that perspective, that's just Jake had a lot of ideas when he left Ozzy, and I think the first album reflects the ideas he had. And then as he saw how well that first record worked and how well the songs went over when we went on tour and all that, I think that allowed him to even open up his writing thing even more. And had bands stayed together, if Dusk had to come out officially, I think that would have even been a further progression of what we did. For me, you don't get to be in a band too often where, I'd be on stage with the band playing live, and I'd go, in the middle of a song, I'd be thinking, man, I'm in the best band in the world right now. And, Jake's my favorite guitar player ever. And I think he's the best live guitar player I ever saw. There's nothing he can't play. He has no limit. So if you want to hear jazz, he can play it. If you want to hear classical, he can play it. You want to hear bluegrass, he can play it. If you want him to learn how to play Yngwie, he could probably do it in an hour and play that. It's just that's just what his kind of thing is. And so he's my best friend. So you're in a band with the best guitar player you ever saw, and he's your friend. And then Ray's the best singer of his generation and maybe any generation. I remember the first time I heard Ray sing in rehearsal, I was like, at the audition, I was like, I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap. How come no one knows who this guy is? How come he's not already in somebody bigger?
Yeah.
Why isn't he in whoever? And then I thought Eric was a great drummer. And then conversely, Jeff Martin is also a great drummer who I've known since like 1975. So, it was just a great band to be in. I believed in the material. I believed in the direction of the band 100%. I never had a question about, should we be more commercial? Should we be more like Motley Crue? I was like, no, I like this stuff. It was very 70s, and it allowed me a platform as a bass player to kind of do whatever I wanted. And Jake really kind of promoted the idea of me doing whatever I wanted. So from the standpoint of not having really an image at that point in LA, kind of suffering with that image thing, and there were a couple bands that I auditioned for in LA that they were like, you don't really have the look. And then the whole Ozzy thing where he flat out said I didn't have the look. Mm-hmm. And I probably didn't. But in Badlands, I got to play the way that I played, the way I grew up playing, and I got to play exactly like that. So my image became less important. My playing was more important. In LA at the time, you got to remember, bass players were like to be seen and not heard. You didn't hear a lot of bass on a lot of those records. They all looked like $1 million. And I didn't. I looked like $1.50. But I was very confident in how I would approach the bass and how I approached the way that I did it. And then, lo and behold, I end up with the cowboy hat thing, and I end up with an image accidentally. You know, I would always wear a cowboy hat anyway, just around. And we went to Japan, and I hadn't been wearing it yet, and I would wear it off stage. And after about 3 or 4 shows, Jake said, "You should wear the cowboy hat on stage. Fits with the name, and you actually look like the real deal with it." And I went, and out of the blue, I had, and I still use it to this day, something that sets me apart. Although a lot of guys wear cowboy hats, I look like an official guy from Texas with a cowboy hat on. So, and I'm happy with that.
Which is not bad from a guy from Canada.
Well, yeah, a guy from Canada, but I guess there's some cowboys up in Canada.
There is, yes. So I may be from Canada myself. So,
where are you from?
We're from Calgary, Alberta.
Okay, and I'm from Toronto.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's always fun because there are so many Canadians that have come down and then to run into them every now and then as they dot the landscape. Well, I mean, like Ronnie himself, right? I mean,
like Ronnie, yeah. It's funny because a couple customers just left the store here, and they're from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I said, there's a lot of Chaissons, and it's pronounced Chaisson in French Canada and in Louisiana. And they said, "What's your name?" And I told them. They said, "Oh yeah, it's as common as Smith." And so it's kind of funny to meet people that kind of know the background of it and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
How has your bass playing evolved over the years from, like, you know, when you started on those early days, you know, into Badlands, and now, you know, through to Freak Show, but even like Atomic Kings and stuff like that?
Well, because I started playing in 71, all my influences were guys from the late 60s and 70s, whether it's Entwistle or Jack Bruce or Tim Bogert or Martin Turner from Wishbone Ash or Felix Pappalardi. So all those kind of guys play in that style, which in those days, bass players were not told to just ride the A string or ride the E string. They were told to create a part that creates some musical tension or direction or whatever. And it was like an actual respected instrument. And no one was like, it's pre-AC/DC. And don't get me wrong, I love AC/DC. But when AC/DC came out, and Cliff Williams is a great bass player, but he plays the simplest thing. I personally couldn't do it. If I was in AC/DC, I'd be fired like at the second rehearsal. They'd say, "Quit doing that." And I'd say, "Okay." And then I'd do it anyway. So I've always my style is kind of about 20 great bass players from the 60s and 70s thrown in a pot, mixed up, and then out comes me. And so I've always wanted to play that style. So when when I was in LA, bands that I would go audition for, they would say, yeah, that's cool. You're not going to do that, are you? And I'd say, yeah, and more. And funny story, when I auditioned, I didn't even audition for Steeler. I knew the drummer, Bobby Marks, and they were looking for a guitar player, and they needed a bass player to come to rehearsal. And so Bobby said, "Do you want to come down and help us audition these guitarists? We'll pay you, and someone will pick you up, and we'll give you a couple $100. I said, "Yeah, I don't want to be in a band." Because I'd seen Steeler, and I didn't like it. I thought, yeah, Ron's voice, I'm not sure. I don't know whether I can dig it or not. So I went down there, and I helped them audition 3 or 4 guitar players, and I played like me. I didn't know any of their songs. I just figured them out on the fly and played. And afterwards, Ron took me to dinner and said, I really want you to be in the band. And I said, and during the audition, I kind of got an inkling of the method, the method behind Ron's madness. That he was totally professional. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was driven. He was going to make it some way, by hook or by crook. He was going to make it. And I thought, you know what? I see it now. I get it. After spending like 4 or 5 hours with him, okay, I get this now. And so he took me to dinner and he said, I really want you to be in the band. And I said, Ron, I don't play like what's happening now in LA bass player wise. And not that there weren't guys that could play, but I mean, the theory at that point was the less is more thing. And I'm more is more. Less is more is fine, but I want more. If it's done right, that's how I do it. And he said, no, I actually want you to play that way. And his exact words were, I had Yngwie on guitar, and now I want Yngwie on bass. I'm certainly not Yngwie, but I am a busier style bass player. And I said, okay. I said, I'm just telling you that I won't change. Because there have been other opportunities where I went to audition and they said, yeah, we'd like to have you in the band because I could sing and all that kind of stuff. And apparently I was fairly good on stage. But they wanted me to dumb down my bass playing, and I just wasn't willing to do it. I wanted to stay true to what it is I did. And so, I ended up being a Steeler for, I don't know, a little over a year or whatever. It evolved into something else. I got my brother Kenny involved in it, who's a similar style bass player to me, and the rest is history. But I always kind of just stayed true to what I was doing, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice that. I wanted to keep my musical integrity to me, and I wanted to be able to look in the mirror and go, okay, if I didn't make it, I wanted it to be because for some other reason other than I couldn't play.
Right.
If someone said, like Ozzy, we can't have you in a band, you don't have the right look. And Jake would say, yeah, but listen to him play. That he's the best bass player we had come out here. Yeah, he doesn't work on MTV. Yeah, listen to him play. And so to me, that was more important, was that. And then I've always just kind of stayed on that. As Badlands became more known and my style would be more accepted, people would always say, where did you learn to play like that? And then I'd say, I don't know, Cactus, first, second, third album, The Who Live at Leeds. And they'd go back and listen to it and go, oh, I didn't even know that kind of bass playing is this. I don't know, Zeppelin, yes. Every album, Sabbath, anything Bob Daisley's ever done. I like to think that I'm kind of like a disciple of those guys that created that style with no template. They made their own style. And I like to think I'm part of that progression of it. So at my age now, when I'm 116, I play the way I play. That's how I play it. That's why I never get a cover band. I'm the worst cover band bass player in the world because I'll play just like I play now, and they'll go, what do you call that being in that stick song?
Yeah, that's right.
I actually had a guy tell me, you're not playing that part in Sweet Man in Blue by Styx Right. And I'd said, I'm playing what he would play if he was capable of playing it. I didn't make very many friends.
Can't believe that. But
we're surprised.
That's one of the interesting things though, is like I remember those moments, like hearing the like thunk 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 bass. But then I do remember hearing those moments of like actual bass as a lead instrument in that regard.
As a melodic.
Yes. Yeah. And it blew me away. And like for me, like that's always where I would rather hear a song that has that bass that, where the bass line roves around and stuff like that and does something, because it's just like, well, that's bringing the music to life that much more.
Well, that's the whole idea of it. And when I was in Badlands, I mean, Jake and I met while I auditioned for Ozzy, and Jake's way of doing things is he'll come in, even when we were with Ozzy, and he'll just start playing something that doesn't exist. He'll just make up a riff, or maybe it's something that he had in his head. And I would play along with it. And at the time, Randy Castillo was there too. And we would just kind of jam on that till Ozzy showed up for maybe 40 minutes or an hour. And so he already kind of knew what my deal was. So when I went to Badlands the first time to audition, and I auditioned 3 times,
wow.
The first time I auditioned, he just started playing a riff, and I just started playing along, and Eric just started playing along, and it was just like very natural for that And it might be a riff that changes keys, that changes tempos, that changes directions. It might go from this kind of rock and riff into this kind of funk sort of thing partway through it, and then it might speed up into something else. And I was capable of doing that, as was Eric and Jeff. That's how rehearsals always were for Badlands. We never came in and started working on a song. We never came in and started playing an existing song. It was always a 40-minute jam, and Ray would make up stuff along the way. He'd be just singing, syllabalizing or whatever. Some of that is like my favorite memories of being in that band. God knows how many great songs and riffs were played that probably were forgotten by the time we got done with them, although some of them did turn into songs.
Yeah. I mean, that must have been really hard with the whole Dusk thing, and then, of course, losing Ray eventually.
Well, I've often said, I know Jake has always said that there'll never be another Badlands without Ray, and I support that decision 100%. I would never call up Jake and say, come on, man. I've always been on the same page with him and vice versa. And so had Ray managed to be alive still, I'm sure me and him and Jake would have done something probably a number of times. We had our differences, but I think time heals all wounds anyway. And I think that we probably would have got together in a room, played, and, even when we weren't getting along, Ray would always, while we're doing some big jam, he'd get a big grin on his face and he'd just go, jammy whammy. And when he'd say jammy whammy, it's just jammy whammy. And you look over at him and he's not even singing. He's just watching me and Jake and Eric or Jeff do a jam, and he's got this big grin on his face. Like, he's probably thinking the same thing I always thought. Man, I'm in the best band in the world. I didn't care whether we didn't make any money. I just cared about the music of it and the emotion that we created. Funny stories when I got in Red Dragon Cartel Jake came out here, he called me, said, hey, I don't really dig what this guy's doing. Do you want to do a show with us at the Marquee? And I said, and I hadn't even actually seen Jake in years, probably since the late 90s. I said, yeah. And he sent me a set list, sent me a Red Dragon Cartel CD and whatever Aussie, and I learned it. And he came out here, and we got at a studio out here. Jake showed up, and I had my gear there, and the drummer's there. And right away, he starts just jamming a riff, right out of the blue. And so we're all going, it's louder than, God, it's like a jet engine in there. And it's the loudest thing I heard since Badlands. And we play for about 45 minutes, and he looks at me, he goes, that's jamming. And I knew that's what he missed. And he would always tell me, the great improviser, you can improvise over anything, which is similar to him. I would always say add the improvisational brothers, because both of us can take whatever it is, and we're never at a loss for what it is. And that's just the byproduct of playing so many different styles, liking so many different musicians, and figuring out how they do their deal and then doing it as well. And I carry that into when I was in Atomic Kings. That was the same thing. I was one of the main writers in the band. A lot of the stuff was written around the bass, and they didn't have a problem with that. It was just kind of a natural progression, for how I kind of approach what I do.
Is it difficult now? I mean, now here we are in Bizarre Guitar and Drums, and
in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
lovely Phoenix, Arizona. Was it difficult to transition, I guess, out of being kind of more of a live stage musician to running this?
Well, I mean, I wasn't looking. I always say I wasn't looking to further the competitive. Hang on a second here. Hello, it's my wife. Okay, hang on, guys, while I talk to my wife. Hey, what's up?
Do you want to come out and just get this from me?
No, I'm doing an interview right now. If you want to just bring it in. It's just it's a recorded interview.
Okay.
Okay.
I just have to leave right away.
Yeah, just drop it off.
Bye.
Okay, bye. And then I'm getting messages from Jeff Martin at the same time.
Oh.
There you go.
Well, say hi.
I will. Since I wasn't going to be in the competitive music business anymore, I was in Red Dragon Cartel. We were touring. Then I came down with cancer, and I was supposed to go out with them in April of 2015. And by then I had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, so I couldn't go. because I had to go right. I mean, stage 4. I found out there's only 4 stages. And so I needed to go right into treatment, and he got another bass player, and that's cool. I couldn't do it, and Anthony's a good dude and a friend of mine, and he can play. And so that worked out good. So I wasn't interested in going on the road with anyone else, unless it was going to be Jake at that time. My wife, Jennifer.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, bye-bye. That ought to make for an interesting interlude on in Green Park. So, the guy that owned, when I was getting done my cancer treatment, the guy that owned the store, who I'd known since 1977, passed away like a week before my last cancer treatment. So his widow said, "Hey, it's in his will. If he passed away, do you want to run the store?" And I said, "I don't have anything else to do." I was teaching little kids how to play baseball when I came down with cancer. And so since then, I've just been doing this. So because she trusts me to run the store, I made a deal with her as far as I'd stay at it as long as she was going to keep it open. I wasn't really looking to tour, and I would get offers now and then. Hey, you want to go with this band or that band? And I don't want to name any names because they have bass players, and I don't want them to think that someone was trying to replace them with a dude in a cowboy hat. But this is just it's very secure. It's kind of like I said, my home away from home. I'm still around music. Ryan, who was the guitar player at Atomic Kings, I've since left the band, and I think, as far as I know, there is no band anymore. He works here. I recorded at his studio. He's like one of my best friends. So we're still always kind of writing stuff as it is. And it's not that I wouldn't go on the road. It would just have to be like, if the Stones call me, I'll go.
So. That'd be great. I mean, I'll bet you'd enjoy that.
I'm sure I would. I'm sure they don't cut any corners on that. So
no, I'm sure they don't.
But I am comfortable here, and I'm comfortable with what I do. And there are situations that I would be interested in, but I'm not sure if and when any of those are going to present themselves. And I'll just cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah.
Or burn that bridge when I get to it.
Well, and I guess that's it, right? When you talk about, I mean, just hearing you talk about, playing with Jake and Eric and Ray and stuff like that, and just the fondness that comes from you. I mean, I feel like that was the right situation. And so, yeah, you would really have to, it would probably be hard, because I think those kind of things they're almost once in a lifetime. Well,
I've often said that Badlands was a once in a lifetime situation. And I mean, the one thing I would play with Jake again anytime. He knows that. No, we don't have anything in the plans. I mean, people are always asking, or you guys, hey, how about the singer? There's nothing going on. I don't know exactly what Jake is doing. Today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Jake. And we talk frequently, but it's never about anything other than what movies we saw or what aggressive situation one of us got into with some other boob or whatever. So it's never about that. Would I play with Jake again? Yeah, I would. And would he be interested in having me at some point? Yeah, probably. I don't know what is on his plate next. I don't know whether Red Dragon Cartel is still a thing or not, because like I said, we don't discuss it. But there is something magic that happens musically when he and I play together. And it's undeniable. People that see us, have seen, even with Red Dragon Cartel, picked up on it right away. So before I kick off and go to the next plane, I would love to play with him again in another band. Whether that happens or not, it's just kind of up to whatever it is he's doing. So I'm not holding my breath, but he knows my number, and he's still my favorite guitarist. And so I would always be interested in being involved with whatever he's doing.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for this. It's been a wonderful time. Please tell everybody how they can keep up with you, the store.
Well, I have a Facebook page, and you can find me there under my name. There's also a Bizarre Guitar and Drum page on Facebook. We also have a website, and we have an Instagram page. I'm not doing a band at the moment. I enjoyed making the Freak Show record. And if Ronnie asked me again to play on something else somewhere down the road, because the experience was so good and I respect everyone involved in it, I would probably do it. I have a project I'm doing right now, getting ready to do with a guy named Greg Monro, who owns the company that builds my basses. And he's an excellent guitarist, singer, and writer. And it's going to be me, him, and Jimmy DeAnda, who's out with George Lynch right now. But it's just a recording project. As far as it being an actual band that plays live, I don't know where that is going. And the other thing is Ryan McKay, who played in Atomic Kings with me. He and I are writing some stuff to record with his brother. He has a brother that lives in Illinois. They've never made a record together, so they want to make a record together. I'm going to co-write some material and play on it. Like I said, Ryan is he's a really good guitar player, and musically, kind of like with me and Jake, we can finish each other's sentences musically. And there's a telepathy to that, and I enjoy that. So that's kind of what's going on for me right now. And I'm glad to have been involved in the things I've been involved with lately. And hopefully I'll find another great place to land. So,
Well, I hope so, because I look forward to many more years of your bass playing.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All righty.